Well, hey, everyone. So good to be with you today. I am so happy to be with you after 6.5 years of doing this podcast. It is hard to believe that it's been that long, back in 2018. I'll tell a little bit about that story in just a minute, but this podcast has been one of the great joys of my life and one of the great joys of my ministry, really. And I'm just so grateful for all of you, right? Whether you've been listening for years or if you just discovered this show, I'm so glad that we're on this journey together. Now, today is going to be a little bit different than usual. It's going to be just me, no guest, no music even. And what I want to do is I want to share some exciting news with you about what's next for spiritual life and leadership. Now, before I get into what's next, let me just share a little bit about where this podcast came from, right? Why did I start Spiritual Life and Leadership? And I got to tell you, I have loved podcasts since they started way back in like 2007 or something. A friend of mine started a podcast with some of his friends. It was called The Guys Podcast. He's a Methodist pastor, and it was just sort of this science-y, nerdy, geeky, gamey, video gamey kind of a podcast. I just had a lot of fun listening to it. And so that was my introduction to podcasts. And ever since then, I've been listening to podcasts almost nonstop. And at a certain point, I was kind of like, it would be kind of fun to start my own podcast. I had actually done some radio back when I was in college. I was, believe it or not, a DJ at a small regional Christian radio station in Western Pennsylvania, where I grew up part of my growing up years. And so anyway, I just liked the idea. I didn't know what to do yet, or when was the right time, or if this was something that God was really calling me to do. But in 2018, I decided that it was the time. Now, I was between churches at the time, and I had been guest preaching at a number of churches, kind of hoping for the next church that God might call me to, due to some things that had happened negatively in a previous church. I wasn't totally ready to jump all in, but I needed a full-time position. I was working for a nonprofit at the time. And so I had interviewed with two churches. One was a full-time position close by where I lived. The other was a part-time position about 2 hours away. I liked both churches, and I had guest preached in both churches. I had moderated their session meetings in both of these churches. Both of them were interim positions, and I thought that I would be offered both of the positions. The part-time one that was far away offered me the position, and I was just waiting to hear from the church that was full-time. And I remember it was on a Friday morning during the summer, like in July of 2018, and I got a call from the person from that church, and they said, we're really sorry. We really like you, but we've decided to hire someone else. And I said, oh, okay. And I was just kind of like, okay, well, that's that. And I said, well, I guess I'm going to take the other position. And this is the church that was in Westmoreland that many of you have heard me talk about. If anyone from Westmoreland is listening, I want you to know I'm really glad that this is how God led me because I love all of you, and I was so glad to be there for the years that I was there. And it gave me the opportunity to start this podcast because I thought to myself, what will I do with this extra time since I won't be full-time at that church? And I said, I know. I guess I'll start my podcast, right? It's time for me to start my podcast. So you know what I did? I went on Amazon. I bought a book called Podcasting for Dummies. Yes, that's the exact title from that For Dummies series, which you may know about. And I just kind of figured out how to start a podcast, and it was great. And so I started this podcast. I think the first episode, I didn't actually check. It was in August or September of 2018. And about a year after that, Todd Bolsinger reached out to me from the Spiritual Life and Leadership, from the new Church Leadership Institute, which was soon going to be started. And he just kind of said, "Hey, can I pick your brain on on doing a podcast?" And I said, "Sure." So we got on the phone, and I mentioned this in the last episode where he and I were talking. Just kind of told him everything that I knew about doing a podcast, everything that I'd learned, everything that I'd figured out. And then he got back to me about a month later and he said, you know what? I don't think I want to start a podcast, but would you be willing to come on with the Church Leadership Institute and become the official podcast for Fuller Seminary's Church Leadership Institute? And I thought about it for about 2 seconds and I said yes, because I already knew Todd, and I knew I would enjoy working with him. I'm a Fuller alum. I knew that I would love being a part of what Fuller was doing. And actually, he was talking about adaptive leadership. The Church Leadership Institute was adaptive leadership, which was my doctor of ministry was in what we called missional leadership, and it was with Alan Roxburgh and Mark Lau Branson, and it was sort of the beginnings of adaptive leadership. Adaptive leadership was one of the key things that we talked about throughout my doctor of ministry program. So anyway, it just felt like everything was coming together, and it felt like a no-brainer. And it turned out to be exactly the right thing. And so I came on officially in March of 2021, right? And ever since that time, Spiritual Life and Leadership has been the official podcast for Fuller Seminary's Church Leadership Institute until just a few weeks ago. The end of 2025. But that partnership was such a gift for me, in numerous ways. One of the things that it did is it provided some credibility. It's one thing to be a guy who starts a podcast and says to people, hey, listen to my podcast. And it's another thing when an organization like Fuller Seminary says, hey, we'd like you to be a part of what we're doing here. And so that was just a wonderful gift to me, and an affirmation, that this podcast was valuable and meaningful and was providing real value for people. One of the other ways that it was a gift was it allowed me to reach out to guests that might have been harder to reach out to had I not had the Church Leadership Institute partnership and that connection to Fuller Seminary. And so, guests like Andy Crouch and Ian Morgan Cron and Rich Velotis and Michael Frost and Alan Hirsch, Ruth Haley Barton, Miroslav Volf, Scott McKnight, Tim Alberta, and of course, Todd Bolsinger, right? It provided all kinds of awesome guests. And I was really, really just grateful to be able to talk to these amazing people. And then one of the other things that I really appreciated was its clear focus on adaptive leadership, which was something that meant a lot to me because of my experience in my doctor of ministry and doing that kind of work in the churches that I've worked for, been a part of, led as pastor, and just a topic that's so important for the church today. Now, why did the partnership come to an end? Well, someone emailed me after listening to the last episode, and in that email, it was very short. They just said, "Good podcast. Sounds like a Lilly grant ended." And I replied, yep, that's exactly what happened. And so no big secret. It was a 5-year grant from the Lilly Foundation. That 5-year grant has come to an end. And so we all knew that there was a very high chance that the current structure of the Church Leadership Institute would come to an end or change significantly after those 5 years. And so that's essentially why the partnership with a podcast is coming to an end. It was no big surprise. It was totally understandable. I never felt bad about it or anything. But what a gift to have this partnership for almost these past 5 years. I've loved every moment of it. Now, what does that mean practically going forward? Well, the podcast is going to continue, right? Same feed, same host, me, same heart. What's changing is the freedom perhaps to try some new things. Not that I didn't have freedom when I worked with the Church Leadership Institute, but there was a focus there that was very important to the mission. But this now that we're post partnership, I kind of have this freedom to try some new things. So let's see what happens. Maybe explore some new topics. Maybe explore some new formats. Maybe do some panel discussions about current issues, that affect the church, that affect leadership, that affect the world. Now, when I started this podcast, right, my purpose was to help leaders develop a healthy inner life of union with Jesus so that we can lead in a healthy way in our outer life. And the reality is that mission isn't changing. Even during the 5 years of my partnership with the Church Leadership Institute, we had a focus on adaptive leadership, but still, for me, and you heard Todd talk about it in the last episode, that emphasis on healthy inner life, healthy and fruitful outer life, right, is so core to what I want to do here with this podcast. And so in a sense, we're not narrowing, we're not losing anything. We're expanding on what we can do here at the podcast as we move into the future. Now, in the immediate future, I want to let you know that I'm going to be taking a sort of creative sabbatical just for a little while, about 12 weeks. I'm going to return on April 7th, which I know sounds like a really long time from now. It sounds like a really long time from now for me too. But as I was looking at my calendar, I thought, you know what, let's just go up through Easter and then we'll come back strong right after Easter. And you know, if you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, that Sabbath is important, right? I've been doing this podcast for 6.5 years, so I'm literally in the middle of my 7th year. And so it feels like this is the right time for me to take a Sabbath, right? And you've heard episodes about Sabbath and burnout if you've been listening to this podcast. And I'll plug 3 of those. Episode 70, the subversiveness of Sabbath with AJ Swoboda. Episode 151, How Did God Intend Us to Experience Sabbath with Ruth Haley Barton. Episode 254, Endless Expectations and Emotional Exhaustion with Jonathan Hoover, right? So this is, we've talked about this. Important, very important. And so now I'm going to practice a brief Sabbath from the podcast. Right after 6.5 years, just feels like the right time to take some time to rest, to reflect, and then come back with fresh energy. Now, I'm not going to leave you with nothing. I'll be releasing encore episodes every 2 weeks. So really great conversations that you might have missed in the past or that are definitely worth revisiting. And so don't worry, your subscription to the podcast will stay intact. Your feed will continue to stay active with new episodes every other week. And you don't have to do anything, right? Just keep Spiritual Life and Leadership in your feed. Listen to the encore episodes that are coming out. And then on April 7th, there will be a brand new episode for you. And I'm really looking forward to that, right? Now, when the podcast returns, we're going to continue to lean into the spiritual formation of pastors and ministry leaders. We're going to continue to focus on developing a healthy inner life so that we can lead in a healthy and fruitful way in our outer life. I'm still going to be interviewing amazing authors and thought leaders, but also, as I mentioned earlier, exploring roundtable conversations, panel conversations, maybe multiple voices tackling real challenges that leaders like you and I are facing. And so, you know, topics like how do we lead in this very polarized world? How do we lead with hope when your inner life feels like it's a mess? Recovering from church hurt. What do you do when your congregation expects you to be a culture warrior, right? What do you do with that toxic board member or those difficult church members? How do you recover from failure in ministry? The financial anxiety of leading a small church ministry. These are not specific plugs for specific episodes coming up, but just some of the ideas that I've been brainstorming in terms of what might we cover as we move into the future. You know, it will all depend on who's available to talk and what matters to people, to the world, to the church, to you, as we move into the future. Okay. I want to talk about exactly then what I would love for you to do. You could really help me out with something as we think about the future, because what I really want to do is maintain the value and increase the value of what we do here at the Church Leadership. So yeah, I'm still with it. I'm still in it. Here at Spiritual Life and Leadership, in the Spiritual Life and Leadership podcast. So 2 things. The first thing is I would love your input. And so I've created a very short 5-question survey. It'll take you 2 minutes. And it covers how long you've been listening, what podcast episode formats you enjoy, topics that you would be interested in when I return. And so to take that very short survey, go to markuswatson.com/survey. And that's MARKUS Watson.com/survey. I'll also put a link in the show notes. As I said, it only takes 2 minutes. And it will help me serve you better, right? It'll help make this podcast more valuable for you. right? I want to know who's listening. I want to know what's resonating with you. And so this survey will be really, really helpful. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is that we're going to do a Zoom call on January 29th at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And so, I get it. It's not a perfect sabbatical, but it is kind of a sabbatical, right? I'm still going to be thinking about what's next for the podcast, but doing this Zoom call would be really, really helpful to me, just a real blessing to me. It's a chance for me to meet you, to hear your stories, to learn what you love about the podcast, and what you would like to see moving into the future. And so I would really love to see you in this Zoom conversation. Here's how to get in on that Zoom conversation. Just email me. Send me an email, markus@markuswatson.com. And again, that's MARKUS at markuswatson.com, Markus with a K. And just tell me that you'd like to be on the podcast, on the Zoom call. And I will send you a link to that Zoom conversation. Right, again, two things: fill out the 5-question 2-minute survey at markuswatson.com/survey. And then the second thing, join the Zoom call on January 29th at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Send me an email. I'll send you the link to connect. And I'll put links for the survey and my email address in the show notes. Now, that brings us to the conclusion of this end of an era conversation episode. I'm so grateful to you, right, for an amazing 6.5 years of listening, engaging, and growing alongside me, right? And really, this podcast exists because of you. If you weren't there, there'd be no one to share any of these ideas with, any of these conversations with. And so I'm so grateful for you. Don't forget, right? Here's what I want you to remember as we conclude here. I'll be releasing encore episodes every other week while I take this sabbatical. And I will be back with fresh content on April 7th, right? Again, know that I'm so grateful for you. I'm also grateful for this opportunity to take a short sabbatical, and I can't wait to be back with all of you on April 7th. And so for now, I say goodbye, although you will continue to get encore episodes in your feed. But for now, I'm grateful to have been with you today, and I will see you next time here on Spiritual Life and Leadership.